Do you ever feel that people come to you because you've lived through hard things? Clients come to you needing what you've walked through. I feel the most strong in this way because I can hold space for hard things. And that's not something that you would see in most business or finance programs. And that's where I bring in something different, which is, I believe, emotional intelligence and an ability to be there for humans. I don't want my clients to just survive. I want them to come out and go, wow, okay, I'm not going to lie. That was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. And I feel unstoppable now. It is really powerful because I can help people through really hard times. God, having to confront the death of family. Who wants to even talk about that? And I'm like, let's do it, man. If you have no ability to be comfortable with feelings, you're going to shut down. And then most likely the client is going to shut down. It's very satisfying for me to hold space for the hard things and then to say, you know what's amazing? We have this K from the divorce. Let's roll it over and have it safe and have you know what it's doing for you. It's very empowering because I can actually help. And to be able to help someone who's really lost is an amazing feeling.
Welcome to the Brett Bennis Podcast, where I bring together a variety of experts in the field of helping you live a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling life. With us today is Amelia K. Wullenschneider, a consultant with Five Rings Financial who blends financial expertise with emotional intelligence to help her clients navigate difficult life situations and build lasting success. She's passionate about helping people make confident, informed decisions by addressing both the numbers and the mindset behind them. I loved this conversation. I think you will too. Let's go. Welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and the type of people that you help?
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, Brett. It's really nice to be here and for all your support so far. So yeah, I'm Amelia Wullenschneider and I help people with anything to do with money. So a lot of times folks don't realize it, but just like any relationship in their life, if there's, say, a person you're not speaking to at the moment and there's tension between you and that person, if you're avoiding that conversation, does that relationship bring more warmth and a feeling of connection, or does there start to be this wedge where that you and that person just drift? And a lot of times we don't realize, but the relationships that are most flourishing, most that are thriving, that are most healthy in our lives are the ones where there's this, wow, I'm putting a lot of energy into this relationship and this relationship is nourishing both of us. It's a balanced exchange of energy. So people don't oftentimes stop and realize, what's my relationship with money? How do I feel? If I was to go on a date with money, would money go on a second date with me? Now, you and I are both married, but it's just something to get people thinking. So even if a person is married, just to get you thinking, if you went on a first coffee chat, like you met them networking, would money want to go and have a walk with you and have a second follow-up chat? It's that same idea. So what I do is I help people with their actual financial plan and their retirement, but a lot of the work that is unspoken, that is going on in the background, is helping people to heal their relationship with money. And a lot of people are willing to speak that out, but some people aren't even ready to necessarily say it. They just say, I need to learn. I need to learn about what to do with money. And that's fine. They want to go to the practical side first, but oftentimes there's a deeper relationship that needs to be addressed. That's a lot of the work I do as a financial consultant.
So you help
yeah.
people's relationship with money get off
Yeah.
to a better start or get reset to a better place. What got you into that type of work?
Yeah. So originally I had thought in my younger years, when I was about 19, I was curious, will I be some kind of counselor or holistic practitioner? And what I realized was that work was not aligned for whatever reason. It wasn't right. And so I wanted to put together my talents, which is I'm very good with numbers and I'm good with people, but I also have a huge heart. And so the first thing that people think of in finance is, yeah, I want folks to be extremely good at this. And so that's what's neat is I wanted to put together my ability to create plans and strategy. And I also wanted to put together my ability to care about people and really provide excellent service by having my business be mainly about human relationships. The reason I bring that up is because I got into it and that originally I thought, well, gosh, am I going to go to school to do social work or counseling or something like that? I even had considered dance therapy for a while there to bring in the creative side of myself. And like I said, when that wasn't aligned, I realized there was a position like this out there. And then even later in my years, because I worked in corporate jobs for a while. And while those were good jobs, the stress was really taking a toll. So finding Five Rings Financial was definitely an answered prayer, an answered communication to the universe, however you want to say it. It was what I needed. I needed to know that there was a company with such support and training and love for people so that I could use both of these sides of myself. So finding them was huge. And that was, I've been with them, I'm going into my third year. And my business partner has been with Five Rings Financial. One of my business partners for about 8 years and another one for 15. So they,
So you started off
well,
in a more corporate culture and all of that. And then
yeah.
was there something that kind of precipitated you changing careers, shifting paths? So that what brought you into this type of career field?
Yeah, exactly. So I was working for an international corporate law firm, Bingham McCutcheon, which they've now been merged several years ago. But I got really sick over the winter working with them. And I'd been there for years and I wasn't getting better. And what I realized was that there wasn't a work life balance. And even though, because I was raised with a very hardworking, incredibly entrepreneurial spirit family, I realized that I needed work life balance because I was starting to get cranky all the time. There was this, first of all, a physical ailment. The body was speaking, right? The body was saying, this is not working. This is not in alignment. And I'll just keep yelling until you hear me, right? That's kind of what it felt like from once I stopped. And so I realized that yeah, the in my experience, there's something about corporate I really like is healthy structure, good training, consistently showing up with systems and what works. I really like that part. And what I didn't like was this sense, and what I see changing in the world is the sense that if you trust people and you encourage them and you love them and you train them well, they'll do their best naturally when they're aligned in their talents in a job. And if they're not doing well, it's either that some of their talents are not aligned or something needs to change. Either the role needs to change, the schedule needs to change, something needs to give. And then I don't find corporate necessarily as a whole, and it's so hard to say that because it depends on the company, but I guess the old model of grind people into the ground, work till you, if you're not in pain at the end of your day, you didn't work hard enough. Like I guess I call it the old Puritan work ethic. And I really think that that needs to shift. So that's been a huge part of why Five Rings was such a relief, like a medicine or a salve to something that was, yeah, out of alignment, not working. Yeah.
So tell me about Five Rings and the part that you play there.
Yeah. So as a financial consultant, I guess to use two things I really like. One of the main things is I get to build a team. So when you're an agent at Five Rings Financial, you actually get to build your own agency. So you get to build an agency within Five Rings Financial. So you get to build a team. And what that did was showed me how good I was. And I had done that in the corporate job with the international law firm. I had been a part of a team on the finance department and the corporate department there. And I had done really well keeping up the team and cheerleading the team and supporting the team and then supporting the lawyers. And that was interesting. That was like this natural talent of mine. And I didn't know how to use that. So, of course, I do one to one work with clients. So, when someone works with me, we can go into that. But it's a one to one like this in a Zoom or in person. And yet, one thing that I really like about building the team is I get to mentor people who are either looking for a full on career change or like my friends who are single moms or single parents. A lot of them are doing this as a side hustle for a little extra income while staying at home with the kids. So it's fun because I realize that mentoring people, seeing them grow, seeing them thrive in something that they love, seeing them getting the training they need, see their self esteem and their self confidence rising, that's the part that lights me up. So I'm very good at it because I'm very encouraged naturally by seeing them get better and feel excited about what they're doing. So that's been really neat that I get to recruit, build a team as well as work with clients. So that's pretty empowering, uplifting.
And one of the things that you mentioned is bringing in your creative side and being able to combine your love of numbers or your skill with numbers with
Mhm.
your creativity. And
Yeah.
a part of that you didn't explicitly mention, but I've noticed, I've seen, and I've heard people talk about it over the years is that money is nigh inseparable from emotion. And
Exactly.
someone's emotional health, one of the ways that it shows up is in how well their finances are doing. And I can attest to that in my own life, both
Yeah.
my own emotional health, the health of my relationship with my wife, all of these things you can start to see. There's a corollary to how well we're doing financially. And I've even heard people talk about the trading markets and the stock markets and all that, how it's
Oh, yeah.
essentially putting your finger on the pulse of putting your finger on the emotion of the world is
Absolutely.
understanding the markets. So how has that come into how you help the people that you help, the understanding the connection between emotion and finances?
Yeah, exactly. Because I do believe that. I believe that the stock market is a reflection of what we believe is going to happen, what we fear is going to happen. We will manifest, and people want to talk about that being woo woo. I'm like, but we're doing it every day with the stock market. Our fears directly affect certain parts of how these things go. So, yeah, no, that is, I couldn't love that more. And then I want to bring in Warren Buffett for a minute when he, and this, people have pushed back on me with this, but I think it's kind of interesting. He's like, the minute you look at your money logically, versus emotionally, you win the money game. At Wine, Women, and Wealth, one of the events I host, a woman who's a holistic practitioner pushed back and she was like, "No, emotions are so important. You gotta be like all up in your health with your emotions." And I said, "No, I didn't say that. I didn't say ignore your emotions. I just said learn logic in balance with your feelings around money." Because what I think he means is not to repress, and I won't speak for him, but what I'll speak what it means to me. Let's not repress our feelings around money. Let's be honest of how it's impacting our marriage, our marriages, our small businesses, our overall mental and emotional health. How is our financial relationship with money affecting? Let's get honest about that. And once we have an open door with the truth of that and we're not putting so much energy into avoidance, we can start to move towards logic with our money as well. And we can create balance. Because I think what happens is when there's imbalance with emotional and mental health issues in connection to money, that's when we see so much challenge with our finances. I don't know if you agree, but it's just really cool what you brought up. Yeah.
And I think it brings up a really important point about emotions, in that the way that I understand them, they're essentially the way that your body and your subconscious communicate. And they are picking up on so many different things that your conscious mind is not able to track. There's just too many things going on. And that can be a very valuable asset if your subconscious is healthy, if you've done the work to get rid of blocks, if you've done the work to get rid of trauma, if you've done the work to get rid of the things that warp the way that or the things that your subconscious is picking up on, it can be an immensely valuable tool to understand all the different things that are going on. You listen to your emotions as an advisor, as this is someone this is a team of people, really,
Hmm.
with the capacity that it has. This is a team of people who are all monitoring all these different things throughout all of your life, including the present moment, including thinking about the future, including remembering the past, all of these things all at once. And as long as you've done the work to become aware of it first and then make sure that it's healthy, you've done trauma healing, you've done all of the stuff,
Mental health
then
counselor,
then
body.
you have a great team to work with
Yes.
and are able to pick up on so many different things. The problem is, if you don't do that work, then you're being bombarded by all these different things that you aren't even aware whether they're healthy or not, or whether they're giving you accurate impulses or not, or you're not even able to work with them, or they're it's a negative thing to totally dismiss them, but it is also negative to let them totally rule your life if you haven't done the work to make sure everything's healthy and aligned. But if you do those things, it can be an amazing asset to be able to make the financial decisions and trust your gut and all the thing. Trusting your gut's amazing if your gut's healthy. And I'm using gut
Well,
proverbially,
exactly.
obviously, of course, but
Oh, but I know what you mean. Your intuition, your kind of sense of knowing. Yeah. No, exactly. Because again, I've heard, I don't know if in my journey, so I do have a journey personally, so not just professionally, of the holistic practitioners in my life are why I am vibrant and me. People always say, "Oh, Amelia, you have lots of energy." And I'm like, well, that's because of the acupuncturist I see, the mental health counselor I saw for a long time. I have no issue saying I thought of that as prevention of basically preventing issues to take over my marriage. If I worked through them when I was young, I figured it would just make my marriage better later. And I know that's kind of a weird way to think of it, but I was doing it so I could have I wanted a healthy family and I wanted a healthy life. So I decided I'm going to do. So again, I
more
want to
people
just,
should think of it that way, like to be
I
able
know,
to do the
right?
pre-work, there would be a lot
Pre-work.
fewer
Yeah,
problems.
before managing emergencies.
Not no
Yeah,
problems, because some problems only come up when you're in an intimate relationship. Imagine getting rid of all the stuff that you wouldn't have to deal with, and then you can focus on just the stuff that comes up in an intimate relationship. But
I mean,
I think more
exactly.
people should think of it that way.
Yeah, and so I wanted to go back to your point on the subconscious mind, because you're right. Before, when I was younger, when I hadn't worked through, when you say the work, I always put it in quotations because the work to me can look so many different ways, but it basically means to me you got in there and you got honest with yourself and you felt held and supported by higher power, God, spirit, universe, life force, tai chi, qigong, whatever someone wants to call it. You got in there and you got honest and you had a mirror and you actually looked at all the places where you had suffering, where you had core wounds, and you said, I'm going to go towards myself, not basically that, right? That's what I mean by avoidance, is to turn away from. So if we all can turn towards ourselves, you're right. Then the subconscious, all the gunk, I would call it, or old mental grooves, because we know when we get exhausted, we have children, we get, right, we get into like modes where we're overwhelmed, we will fall back into old mental grooves unless we rewrite them. So I just wanted to say how much I love this in connection to money, but in general, just being a vibrant, vital person you want to be in the world, how important it is to do the
And I
work.
think it's incredibly important as well that someone like yourself, who is emotionally in tuned and aware, who also works in the financial world, is out there, because it is, perhaps it's a stereotype, but it is the stereotype that I think
Yes,
represents how a lot of people view how financial people tend to be this like cold, dry, purely logical. And it's not the type that you and I just described, where they're in tune and aware of their emotions and being informed by the advisors of their subconscious. It's more that we've cut them off and we're just doing logic. And that
exactly.
can be just as dangerous,
I
because
think so.
you were cutting off 90% of your advisors, 90% of the things, of your intuition, 90% of the things that could
Yes.
actually inform your decisions that you're making. You're just cutting that off and saying, no, I'm just going to use my prefrontal cortex to make this decision.
That
And
to me
that's
is so
just as dangerous. And someone like you who brings those two things together, tell me how that typically goes down.
yeah.
Like when you're coaching someone,
Yes.
someone's coming in
Yes.
there, maybe they expect you to be this kind of emotionless analyst type thing, but how do you coach someone through that?
Yeah, and so that's exactly right. People tend, do you ever feel this way that people come to you because you've walked through hard things? So clients come to you needing just what you've walked through because they're maybe like a divorce. They're maybe at this side of the hard things and you're on the other side. So in Chinese medicine, the paramita, to cross the sea of suffering, it's like you're looking at a bank of a river and you're waving to them. So because I feel the most strong in this way because I can hold space for hard things. And that's something that not all, again, like you said, financial professionals, even the term holding space, that's not something that you would see in most business or finance programs. And that's where I bring in something different, which is, I believe, emotional intelligence and an ability to be there for humans. And what I mean by holding space is to be able to take a deep breath, say, this sounds heartbreaking. This divorce sounds like it is ripping you apart. And you sound, I'm thinking of a client in my mind. You sound like you're feeling like you're in lizard brain. You can't even think clearly. That sounds really hard. And if we as finance people could have a little bit more emotional intelligence, could the relationship with the whole process be basically one of those things where you came out stronger than you came out? Basically, I survived. It's like, well, that's lame. I don't want my clients to just survive. I want them to come out and go, wow, okay, I'm not going to lie. That was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. And I feel unstoppable now. I feel so empowered. I know what I'm doing. Maybe because, so I'm thinking of this one client, because I got divorced, now I'm going to start my own small business and she's thriving. She faced that even though she came through the divorce, for example, she came through the divorce very financially stable, she didn't feel financially confident. And that's when I first noticed that my skill as someone who can be have emotional capacity, have kindness, have care, why that was going to be so useful is because she needed to bring up her self esteem to match the money she had. So the money was there, but she didn't feel comfortable with money. Does that make sense? It's like, so that's why I think that, yeah, it is really powerful because I can help people through really hard times and I can help them through estate planning. God, having to confront the death of family. Who wants to even talk about that? And I'm like, let's do it, man. We can do this. I'm like this weird kind of light, like be the light cheerleader for very hard things. So it's a really interesting thing. I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I was supposed to do in this world. So That's kind of an example of how it can look with clients and how it can help, as opposed to being, if you're someone who can't, so uncomfortable with emotions and you're the financial person and someone is crying because they're going through the divorce in one of your financial meetings. If you have no ability to be comfortable with feelings, you're going to shut down. And then most likely the client is going to shut down.
And that ability to both hold space with someone and then say, okay, what are we going to do about it?
That's exactly
Bringing
why I
both
like
of
the
those
job.
things together.
Yes, because you can actually do something about numbers. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Whereas a job, when I was looking, like I said, at this transpersonal stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, this is way too overwhelming because I can't. And to be honest, that's my own emotional journey, but I can't do something about it. Like, I have a human design I'm made up in a way where it's very satisfying for me to hold space for the hard things and then to say, you know what's amazing? We have this K from the divorce. Let's roll it over and have it safe and have you know what it's doing for you. And I know that may seem like a what? How is that? But it's very empowering because then I can actually help. And to be able to help someone who's really lost is an amazing feeling. It's like, it's literally like you're uplifted and it's kind of like a thank God, we were able to do something
It's
about this.
honestly a skill. It's an amazing skill that I'm working on learning myself, just even in my relationships where I have a certain bent towards kind of the emotionalist rationalism, that sort of thing. But I have learned to also become more aware, and I've been through my own healing journey, and I have my own traumas and stuff that come up and I get triggered and all this stuff. But then
Right.
how do I be that safe place for someone to go through their stuff with? And there's a
Yeah.
difference between I'm a rock that the waves crash upon, and
Mm,
there's no there's no engagement there versus, I don't know, maybe more of a harbor is one way I've heard it think of, where
I like it.
there's all of the waves crashing out there, but then there's a safe space where you can come and still feel, but you're safe to feel.
That's nice.
And I'm still I didn't come up with that concept, but I'm working on doing that myself. Is there what are some of the lessons that you learned just to be able to walk that line with someone over your own
Oh, yeah.
career, over your own personal life? What are some of the things that you've learned to do that?
That's such an important question because that's exactly why people say, "Well, what's going on?" And I'm like, "I'm honestly at the best stage of my entire life. Definitely a fine wine up in here." And what I mean by that is there was a lot of mucking. 20s and 30s for me were a lot of mucking to figure this out. But what really changed it was definitely a healthy marriage with ability to talk, love each other, get on the same page, clear communication around who's working when, who's taking care of the kids or the dogs or the bird when, who's cooking when. So clear communication in all your personal life always, and then you can thrive at work. But really, what changed at work on top of the healthy personal life was having a mentor. That was huge. At first, I thought, come on, it cannot be that big a deal. I was an entrepreneur my whole life. My family, dad, grandpa, sister, mom, and I was like, I'm not going to be an entrepreneur. And the only reason I didn't want to be was because I thought it was inconsistent money. I didn't want the ups and downs. I wanted stability. And I had an incorrect mental groove story that told me that an entrepreneur meant you couldn't have consistent money, which is absolutely untrue. And Amanda Francis will be the first one to tell you in her book, Rich AF. It has a swear word. So, I won't say the swear word, but she says you can expect money to be consistent. And when I did that and did some emotional prosperity work around money, worked on my emotional relationship with money, plus having mentors at Five Rings Financial. And for an entrepreneur, that could look like a business coach. People resist the amount of money it costs. And if I could say one thing that you guys take away besides grow your money tax free, we can come to that another time. That's kind of a joke. But really, on the emotional side with money, on the healing side with money, if I could say one thing, it's as a business owner, please don't shy away from the investment of having a mentor because that was totally different. It's like having a good relationship with your husband or wife or partner. It is equal your mother, your father, your grandparents, someone who is there to be your cheerleader, support you, see your dreams, recite the words when you forgot the song and you're like, I'm tired, this is getting hard. A mentor does that on the business side. And if that's for you, if it's not, if the people listening, if it's not applicable, if you're not an entrepreneur, that could be a boss. That could be anyone you look up to in a position where you spend a lot of your time in a work environment. Find someone where you can elevate with them, that they uplift you, but also they teach you things. And you can come to them and say the hard things. So with my mentor, I can come to her with the personal things and I can come to her with the work things. And it's been it's been the biggest thing that has really changed thriving. versus surviving. Yeah, or just coasting. Yeah.
So if someone, whether or not they're looking for financial help, if someone is looking to grow in that skill of holding safe but productive space for someone, how, if you could break it down into a couple steps when you are encountering someone who's going through something hard, whether it be a loved one or someone you encounter out in the professional sphere, how do you kind of work through that conversation? What are the milestones that you try to hit in order to
Mhm.
make sure that they feel safe, in order to make sure that they feel held and empowered, and then
Mhm.
actually move them forward to the next practical
Yeah.
steps?
And I wanna say that takes as long as it takes. So meaning that could be a few sessions, that can be one of the person that I was working with who lost a husband this summer. That was months of sessions before we did anything practical because we needed to put out the fires of what had happened. Loss of a loved one or divorce. Some of these are just most common examples. Small business going under, a medical condition, something like that. So the first thing I've noticed is you get on the call or the in-person meeting with them and you need to I need to listen. So what I need to do is first of all, hear who they are, you know? So the biggest thing is what's important to you right now? What's going on? Where are you have any questions come up for you since you thought about your relationship with money or what's going on right now that needs to be addressed so you can be present? Because usually what's happening is people are feeling pulled. They're feeling their attention is it's almost like a distraction because something in their financial life is causing this constant question mark and they don't know how to proceed. So it really is important for me not only to get out the questions around money, but to hear their whole dreams. You know, when do you want to retire? You want to move to Peru? Oh, you want to retire in Portugal in 5 years? If I don't know that about someone, how can I help to create safety? I basically need to learn what's important to you and your family so that I can help you really what do you need the money to do and by when? And then once they start telling their story.
And
Yeah,
I want to go back and continue with that, but I just want to jump in here. I love
please.
the invitation to dream,
Mhm.
because that is something that, whether someone is going through a crisis or whether they're just kind of going through life. I actually wrote a book that talks about, the title's Live Your Dream Today, but it's
Yes, yeah.
the invitation to dream is the first step,
Mhm.
and to reconnect with those childhood dreams, or to just ask yourself one of the favorite questions that I love to ask: if money and time were no issue, what would you do?
I mean, exactly.
And
Did you
and
know what
inviting
Amanda
people
K
into that. No,
it's
I
one of her exact
don't
journal
think I've
prompts.
heard. Really? I didn't know that.
Yes, she literally
I
says if
don't think I've
money
ever.
sorry, I'm getting too excited.
No, I love it, and it's one of those things that I talk about in my book, and I share with other people when I'm working with them, of like, I start to dig and prompt for those questions, and sometimes people aren't ready for those questions. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
right.
too much to even ask that. But
Yeah.
if they are, just inviting them to think beyond the horizon, that can give them it can give them so much. It can give them hope for dealing
Yes,
with what
hope.
they're dealing with today.
That's
It can give
exactly
them a
right.
direction for being able to navigate through all of the mess and understanding of what they want things to look like afterward. And it can give them motivation to keep going when things
Motivation to
are
keep
really
going because
difficult.
people will
And
quit,
in a
right?
way that is authentic to yourself. It's not just, well, that looks good. Someone else told me I should do this, so I'll go do that. But like really looking inside, what would I do? And it gives them that hope. So I just wanted to jump in and say I love that that's
'Cause
your
it is
first
the
thing
hope.
of connecting with that part of them.
We don't jump into financial instruments. In fact, if they try to, I say directly, and I said this to a client recently, he's a young man, and I was like, I find it doesn't go as well as we just establish a relationship. We jump right in there. Do you mind if we just talk about your dreams and who you are a bit before I make a suggestion? And he was like, oh, because I think that people are so used to being sold to. And I'm like, I don't work off sales quotas, so I'm good on, I don't think anyone needs that energy in their life, especially more salesy vibes.
We'll get back to that conversation in just a minute, but I have a quick question for you. If you've been enjoying this podcast, you might be interested in some other resources we've been developing. Search benniscompanies.com and you will find books, podcasts, and other resources that we're developing to help you live a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling life. Back to it.
Giving people hope. We do this thing where we close a piece of paper several times until it's as small as it can get, and then you open it up and there's different squares, and we ask people to dream and fill in the squares. And most people, Brett, they have a very hard time. It's something in the 30s. I believe it's 32. A lot of people have a hard time getting past 10 because we've been so taught, a lot of us, to keep a lid on wanting. And this is where the Amanda Frances comes in. She does a lot of journal prompts in her book. That's why I really recommend that book if you're trying to get in there and just rewrite your relationship with money. One of the journal prompts is if no one was going to be negatively affected and if there was enough time and money and resources, what would you want to do? What would you want to do right now? And I think it's so interesting because I did see that book when I was researching your podcast and looking at all the neat things you were doing. And I did make that connection as well that if you can give people space to dream, that the hope starts to expand. Even my years at Five Rings Financial, I need all the more spaces now than those squares. But at first I could even barely get myself past like 15. And then I had to just
There's another thing that it offers as well that a lot of people don't realize because I won't say most people, it's hard to imagine the other side of your journey from where you're at. But one of the things that I have also shared with people, the importance of dreaming big, dreaming larger than your current reality, is that I've kind of encapsulated into a phrase that for me kind of demonstrates the gravity of it, is that if your resources ever outgrows your dream, it will become your ruin.
mm,
Because money and resources and all of that, they have to have a goal, they have to have a direction, or they will find a direction. And if
that's
you
right.
don't have the capacity, if you don't have the goal, if you don't have the dream, if you don't have something that you want to do with this extra that you've accumulated, especially if you accumulate it quickly and you've not had a chance to grow into it yet,
That's right.
it can be very, very negative end result for you. So it's so powerful to always have something beyond the horizon that you're dreaming for. It's not saying don't be content. Be content with where you are
Yeah. And say thank you with what you
and
have. Yeah.
enjoy where you are, but always know where you're going.
That's right,
Know
because
what you
world to hold you
want
right will
to do.
sway you. It's like a ship. If you have a clear set course, the ships get to that destination. If you're kind of just blowing the wind can whoop sweep you off course. And I will also say to that, there's something to focus around money that I feel money is very, very neutral. So money needs to be directed. Hey there, money. I'm so grateful that you are consistent in my life. Here's my minimum that I make every month, and here's the limitlessness I'm working towards. And can you please help me to raise my self esteem to hold and grow that money, not just receive? Because people often talk about receiving, and I'm all into that healing journey. And what about holding and growing? Because, like you're saying, if the self esteem isn't risen up to meet the limitless money, people tend to actually make the money go away back to where their self esteem meets that money. They'll manifest the water heater breaking down if you own a home. They'll some weird bill. If having 1,000 in your bank account is where you're comfortable and you get 1,500, you will manifest some strange $500 bill because we have to work on raising
I have seen
people's
that more
self-esteem.
times than I like to admit. It has happened so many times.
Isn't it wild though? It's just mathematical. It's like, again, kind of
Like,
like
I remember
numerology.
sitting down with my wife and tracking it of like, over the last 2 years, the amount of money that we've had has gone up and down, but we've always stayed right here. If we get more, we spend it. If we get down here, we're okay, but if we get over, we spend it always stays right at a certain level. And I'm sure
That's
there's
exactly
a
right.
multiplicity of things that are affecting that, but one of them is definitely your internal capacity to hold space for money and to understand what you want to do with it, understand where you want it to go.
And our self-worth, if you don't mind me saying. I think that what I love about Amanda Frances, as you can tell, I'm totally into that book right now. We're reading it in Wine, Women, and Wealth. It's very up for me. She talks a lot about our self-confidence. And then at Five Rings, actually, when we're training our agents, we talk a lot about that, about expectations around, what they can expect to earn in this job. And we talk about, first of all, we call ourselves a personal development and a professional development company that happens to be in financial services because we've noticed if we don't raise the self-esteem of our agents, they won't make the income either that they're asking to make. It's this inner work that has to be, like you're saying, simultaneous with the creation of earning money and holding and growing money. It's pretty wild, but you're exactly right that you'll see yourself just be like, what the heck? Why am I here? And so for anyone in that space, I would really recommend a book like Amanda Frances or any kind of journal prompts or anything that rewrites the mental grooves, just getting really honest about what's the limiting thinking going on? What are the limiting stories? And let's just go ahead and rewrite those a little bit, let those clear out and give them the time they need. Because as we know, rushing ourselves through it or telling us we should be somewhere because John is there, that you're totally right. That's not going to do it. We have to get there. I know I shook the thing. We have to get there on our own. So that's very smart that you can see that.
and I've found a book that is, I don't think it's complete in and of itself, but I think it offers corrective teaching, is The Secret. I don't know if you've ever read The Secret, but
By Earl Nightingale?
it's, I
No.
believe so, yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, the
that's
one
we love
essentially
that.
manifesting and understanding how you can manifest a future and all that. And I think it's a partial story. I think it
It's
tells
a
part of it.
partial. I like that. Yeah, it's true.
And in where it's encouraging, I like to call it corrective teaching, where someone is way left of center. They don't need to be told to come center. They need to be told to come all the way over here so that they can center out. And so I believe it's kind of that type of book where it's bringing someone over, but then there's the corrective side of it where you won't necessarily manifest what you think you want. You'll manifest what you're ready for.
Oof.
And what
Wow.
you talked about right there, there's a balance to those two things. And it sounds like that book maybe walks that balance pretty well.
Well, I like what you're saying though, is because I have a Goodreads account and I share this at Wine Women of Wealth with a QR code and at my financial education events because I actually think you're right. And I have noticed this recently after years of reading all of these books, not only on personal and professional development, but on money, on relationship with money. I've realized that it's an onion layer peel. So I think this one is speaking to me so powerfully because I've done Think and Grow Rich, a book called The Go Giver, The Energy Bus, Atomic Habits. I'm just trying to think of actually you're a BA at making money, another swear word, and then title of that book. You're a BA at making money, and then another one that's huge. I'm kind of forgetting. It's okay. It'll come back if it's important. And you're right. I think it's an onion peel of all those books. And I've actually done the journal prompts. Whenever it's asked me to do something, like Think and Grow Rich asks you to memorize the self-confidence. He has a whole prompt on self-confidence. He asks you to memorize it and say it once a day in the hope that you will rewrite your brain and reach your dreams. And I did it. I was like, you know what? If these books are recommending it, what have I got to lose? So, doing all the prompts, I think you're right. I think it's doing all of them over time and trusting your own intuition on which books to follow, that they all tend to, I don't even know if stack up is the right term, but they all tend to lead you closer and closer to a healthier relationship with money. Each one of
And
them,
I like
right?
the part that you mentioned there as well, because the rewriting of your brain. I know that some of our listeners may hear The Secret or hear talk about manifesting and all of that, and that might sound woo woo to them.
Woo woo. Yeah.
And from your perspective, perhaps it's right. There's, regardless of whether you buy into a spiritual connection of all things and all of that, there's
Yeah.
a reality of your brain your brain becomes reshaped to what you constantly tell it. What you
That's right.
repeat to yourself will become your assumption about life. And your assumption about life will drive how you interact with the world, and how you interact with the world will drive what you receive from it.
Exactly.
Whether or not you consider that spiritual, or whether or not it's just cause and effect through all these different correlated
Yes.
interactions. Either way, you will affect the world, and that will reflect back to you what you expect from it
Yeah.
because of how you interact. A simple way to think about it is I deal with social anxiety, so I deal with this all the time. If I walk up to someone on the street and I'm imagining them having the worst possible reaction to my approaching them on the street, I have pumping anxiety. It's affecting my facial expression. It's affecting my tone. It's affecting how I approach. And people respond more based off of the feel that they get from you than the simple words that you say. As much as I would like it to be otherwise, because I have ASD and everything for me is like, I said this, but if everything about the underlying emotion, everything about people respond to that. And I walk up to this person pumping cortisol in my veins and having this
Right.
expression of, you actually are going to hate me. They'll respond that way. They'll respond
Well, they
like,
feel the
I don't know what's
discomfort
wrong with you, but something's not right, and I want you to
and
get
they'll feel
away
the
from me.
tension. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Even if they
And
won't have the
people
same
respond to that.
word.
And that's one example, one interaction with someone. But that happens. Imagine that over the course of your entire life. All of your interactions, you will see what you expect to see.
Exactly. You can think of it as, I liked how you said that you don't have to, listeners, like for everyone listening, you do not have to, exactly like you said, stand at a certain point in your spiritual or religious beliefs. You don't have to believe in manifestation to understand the neurobiology, the neuroscience around the brain. So I like how I like how you're making that connection because it's true. What you feel in your body in that moment, regardless of if you feel like it's too woo woo or too feely, you're having a chemical experience. And you're right, the cortisol. And a person, even if they can't hear the words, you're right, they hear the story. They feel the tension. And they're like, and of course, obviously, they're also distracted because some of them would be even concerned. When if we could find our ground and find our feet and are knowing that we are held and we're loved and we're supported and we're good, how we are in the world is important and needed, because I do believe that you don't just come in this world randomly. Like your personality and the gifts you have are needed. So if you could trust that, so getting into like a self trust, you're right. It does affect the stories. It affects the way someone meets you. It affects what then comes to fruition in life and how that rewrites the mental group of, gosh, look, good things happen for me. Wow, look at these doors opening for me. My gosh, I'm so grateful. And you're absolutely right that it writes the story both for the hopeful side or for the, harmful side. And then being aware. So even if you don't believe, again, just to summarize, if you don't believe in the spiritual and the woo-woo, just study the neuroscience. Look into some of the way that how the brain works and understand that it's very important, your internal dialogue, the stories you tell yourself, and then exactly the way you interact with the world. Absolutely. So I
And
love
we
that.
have been we have been engineered personally through a lifetime of experiences, reading how other people are approaching us, looking for
Yeah.
danger, looking for safety. But also epigenetically and genetically throughout the generations, we have had to learn to survive. And it's the downside of the survival of the fittest, or the downside of the way that our brains have been engineered to survive, is that we don't necessarily look for what's helpful. We look to avoid what's hurtful. And
That's right.
that means that even if something isn't hurtful, we have a bias against it if it might be. And
Mhm.
that's very helpful to survive. The problem is it's not very helpful to thrive. It will get you to the next day, but it won't get you to the next level.
Exactly. I think of
I
that as
should write that
elevating.
down.
Again. No, that is good. That is really good. You're obviously a writer, and I think it's really cool. That's a beautiful skill to have because, yeah, people need to hear that. People need to hear that. And that's why I brought it up. What is survival, but what is thriving? I don't want my clients to just survive, which is if there isn't room for this basically understanding that we're so much more than just the logic, like you said, just the frontal cortex and getting the tasks done. How do we get to the space where the client leaves an interaction with us, no matter what industry we're in, feeling elevated, feeling limitless and hopeful about their lives? I mean, that's to me, that's across any job you have. That would be a wonderful outcome. Yeah.
So, who do you find yourself working with the most on the professional side? I know that you work with people individually, financially, and you work with them emotionally, but who else on the professional side might you collaborate with to help that person grow or to
Oh,
help that person get through their next level?
yeah. So, do you mean like other professions I find myself being asked? Like, some of my clients ask me for a lot of referrals, and it starts to open up organization and getting their ducks in a row for a better term. As people start to work with me and they get excited about this, like I can actually do this, then they want to get all their ducks in a row, I do find. So I get asked for CPAs and bookkeepers and estate planning attorneys. And then if there's emotional mental health issues going on, like the client who lost a loved one, lost a spouse recently, for example, a grief group, I get asked for mental health. So I work with anyone that can help that person get to the next level. But yeah, in terms of organization, I really love when I see clients set up an estate plan on top of doing what they do with me and they put us in touch. But I don't know if that's what you meant.
No, it's along the
Yeah.
same lines, and understanding all the different parts financially that the people have to get their ducks in a row. But then also you mentioned the emotional work, and perhaps I would imagine you might either refer them to a therapist or a marriage
Yeah,
counselor if it's that, or these
exactly.
different areas, or even a social worker, someone who might be working with the family and connecting them with resources, that sort of thing. I was just wondering whether or not you currently do, who might be a good idea for someone in a position such as yourself to collaborate with those other people, even if you were to imagine, for example, if you were to imagine your dream team of these different specialties to be able to
Mm.
work with your clients, who would fill in your dream team?
Well, I love that. Actually, I think about that quite a lot and it tends to overwhelm people. So I have to ask them, I have to check in and say, if I start to dream this whole team of people for you, and for some people they have said, okay, I'm not ready for that, one step at a time is better for me. But those listeners out there who can have a brain like mine where they get excited about seeing the full picture. And a random, it's not necessarily about, well, it is kind of about emotional intelligence. A story I like to rewrite a lot is that wealthy in America, billionaires are just skipping over paying taxes, and this is not fair. And like there's this anger and resentment story that I don't feel is useful for anyone. Basically, what it does is breeds othering. And I'm like, look, in terms of class, race, any of it, it's not good to other someone. That's just not a constructive way of being. So what's an interesting little fact is that the wealthy in America pay about 10% less in taxes because they actually just oftentimes have a whole tax strategy team. It's not that someone is just out there taking advantage of the man and sitting on their yacht. It's that oftentimes the wealthy in America are paying their tax strategy team 10% more than they're even paying their financial person or spending on their financial strategy, regulation, growth, all of it. So I bring that up because they have a whole team of people saying, hey, here are tax codes. Because but people in the middle America, which is who I work with a lot, I wanted to say that too. I don't just say, oh, here's my minimum as a finance person. And if someone doesn't have a $2 million portfolio, I'm not working with them. Five Rings Financial is known as actually serving middle America, especially in just you and I's lifetime, how much middle America has grown. It's a population that really needs financial literacy and financial education. So we like to teach that H&R Block, folks like that are tax preparers. But the thing is about the wealthy in America and why they pay less in taxes because they have a tax strategist who's looking at the tax code and making a strategy. And if you're lucky enough to have a bookkeeper or a CPA in your life like that, for any of the listeners out there, I mean, gosh, they are a precious, precious professional service because they know what they're doing. And if they're providing you strategy, the value of that is so huge because understanding the tax codes can help you really, I mean, in terms of if we're going back to emotional health, having professionals that are there to support you. So my dream would be that everyone could have a team like that they wouldn't have to be in the top 3%, top 10% to have to be able to take advantage of the resources that we have financially in our country. We actually are very robust. A lot of us just need education and the right people. So I would love to have tax strategy for people. And I've had a very good experience with lawyers. Some people haven't. They've had trauma, like you said, activated nervous systems over that. And I totally respect that. I just haven't. So I've been blessed in that way. I find lawyers to be incredibly supportive, meaning paying them their hourly is so wonderful because making errors can create so much stress. So like it's interesting. It sounds like I'm talking left brain or logic stuff brain, but I'm really talking about our emotional wellness when you have the right professionals giving you support. So estate planning lawyers, business lawyers, a quick question to them can save you so much turmoil and making just errors as a family. And then on the emotional team, I do tell anyone who wants to listen to my life for a referral, I say, holistic practitioners, whether you don't like needles, so you don't want acupuncturist or you want a massage therapist, but do something to regulate your nervous system. Because in this modern world, everyone's nervous systems are just so jacked by the expectations and the dings and all of
And
it
going
that I
back to
think
what we
that
said earlier, that your emotional health will be reflected in your financial health.
in
So
your financial
you
health,
need to
yeah,
take
it's
care of
very
both of
much
those
so.
teams.
Exactly. So my dream team is really a mixture of very, very good professionals who help you manage and folks who regulate your nervous system, whatever that looks like. Again, if it's even consulting a pastor at your church, if it's singing, there are so many ways, but just do something that brings it all down, helps you de-stress. So that's kind of my dream team. And then actually other financial professionals. I'm not one that's like it's a competition. If there's another financial professional in someone's life, I'm like, great, add me to the team. I would love to be a team member. I don't have to be the only one because I come from the mindset that there's enough. And that's something for probably a whole nother conversation. But I find it's very fascinating that in the financial services industry, how much scarcity mentality drives competition between financial professionals. And I ain't got time for that.
Uh, And I feel like there could be a whole nother podcast dedicated to
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
from a macro level and the effects that it has on society, the
Yes.
way that there's the competition mindset, how that drives businesses to form themselves and how they treat their customers and clients and employees, and then how that then ripple. It's just The idea
It's yeah,
of there's enough versus there's not enough, and I have to fight for it, and,
yes,
like, those
yes,
those those are 2 very core drivers that they produce very different societies based on,
exactly.
what you're operating under. So, going into these are the different people you'd have on your dream team. You'd have your financial experts, your legal experts, and then you'd have your emotional regulation experts, your therapists,
Yes.
your trauma informed, all of this, everything to kind of bring those things together. In your current practice, do you find that you have to do much of the legwork to bring those people together, or have you
No.
found that there's already kind of a system in place to bring that to your client?
Yeah, what's really great is I don't know if you do this, but I started a leads group within the Evergreen Chamber of Commerce. And so one of my intentions was to have lots of different industries represented because first of all, we just noticed that all small businesses are better. There's a Harvard business study on when you get 20 to 25 people from all different industries represented in an exchanging leads group space to build each other's businesses, you see a 35% increase in closed business on whether you're an acupuncturist to a mechanic to a finance person to life insurance to car insurance to mortgage to real estate. It actually doesn't matter. Marketing person doing magazines and digital. It doesn't really
7
matter so
degrees of
much.
separation.
Yeah, everyone knows humans, so you get people together. So my thought is just get out there and meet people. So I haven't had a hard time with it at all, especially because Evergreen is a smaller town and we're very encouraged. Chamber up here is amazing. We're very encouraged to know each other and support each other and grow together.
So you've been able to build and leverage that network.
Oh my gosh. So for example, my the acupuncturist colleague of mine that I speak of a lot, she just said, "Hey, can we do a money mindset mocktails event at my wellness clinic?" So we're going to do money education and then also educate people on mocktails. If you want a like really healthy drink that has, focus, things for focus and, helping brain activity and energy naturally with ginseng and all sorts of things, herbs. We're going to educate that you don't need alcohol to calm down. You don't need caffeine to ramp up. There's ways to do this naturally. And I love it because it brings together this personal passion on my health journey with holistic wellness and together with like money education. So she asked me to do an event, right? So it's like, yeah, there's no limit. Just collaboration is just a beautiful thing. Even though she's an acupuncturist and I'm a financial consultant, it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, I found it to be pretty. If your heart is open and if
Mhm.
your door is open to meeting the right people and knowing that you will, then you will, and you'll thrive.
Yeah. So speaking of events that
Yes.
are coming up, do you have
Yeah.
any that you are planning in the near future that our viewers might
Yes.
be interested in, either virtual or in person?
Yes, so that's a good question. So, thank you for asking that. That's very supportive. I do focus on free financial education events because I believe financial literacy is a right, not a privilege. So I do two events. One is Wine, Women, and Wealth, and that one's really nice. We do it both in person and virtually every month. So the first Wednesday of the month, it's in Evergreen, and second Wednesdays, it's in Golden. And then here's the fun part: the third Wednesdays, it's online. So my teammate Stara Mara is incredible. She's been doing this for 15 years now online, even before the world, right, in 2020 got pushed virtually. She had already wanted a life. So she's one of my teammates that represents wanted a life that was virtual. Costa Rica, Hawaii, Colorado. I mean, she wanted it all. So she created it literally. So it's like, okay, anything is possible. And so I really love going to that. The virtual one is great. We're reading a different book than what we're reading in Golden and Evergreen. So the best thing to do is the contact information is if you want the Zoom link is to reach out to me directly and I send it based off the contact information that Brett provides. And
And we'll
then
put that in the description below.
yeah, I was just gonna say exactly. You'll know where to find that, listeners. So, and then we also do on the first and third Wednesdays, we do a financial education event. So on the third Wednesdays, it's right after Wine Women and Wealth. So if people want to come to Wine Women and Wealth for an hour and then go to the financial education event. The financial education event afterwards is very much meat and potatoes. It's more, okay, I need 6 principles for saving and protecting money, paying less in taxes, strategizing my future, learning, just getting my foot in the door to learning, whatever, start where you are. It's actually all at a sixth grade reading level and a sixth grade learning levels. That first class is meant to be simple so it doesn't overwhelm and activate people's nervous systems. It's meant to be straightforward. So those are on the first and third Wednesdays. We also do those on the second and fourth Tuesdays and then some Mondays. So they're happening a couple times a week. Something is happening. And then in person in Golden, we do a craft chocolate tasting actually to like, all right, let's just ease. It's okay. We can talk about money. Let's have a little enjoyment. So my business partner does a little craft chocolate tasting, things you
Is
can't.
that only women? Because I'm a huge fan of
No,
chocolate.
no, well, that's what I very much wanna get good at saying. I work and love working with men, and men are invited to that one. That is a co-ed event that happens once a month, every month in Golden on the 3rd Tuesdays. So, yes, men are very much welcome, and if you want in the description, I can give you
I actually make my own chocolate that I might bring for tasting.
my gosh, that would be so cool. You make your own chocolate? That's Is there a podcast on that? I wanna listen.
No, I have considered a cooking podcast though, but no.
I would say please, if you wanna do a chocolate podcast, I would be all ears. I'd be sitting there, a little fly on the wall. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
nice to just have pleasure and have things to enjoy. So and then we also do a financial education dinner once a month in Littleton or, like, the Highlands Ranch area. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yes.
there you have it. Thank you so much, Amelia. This has been an amazing conversation. I would love to do it again and talk. We feel like we could talk about 20 different things, but
You
thank you
could.
so much for your perspective. And again, it's such a unique and valuable thing to be able to bring together emotional intelligence and financial intelligence and merge them into a way that not just helps people survive, but helps them get to the next level and thrive. So thank you so much for your wisdom and for your time.
Thank you, Brett. I really appreciate it. I feel equally uplifted. Thanks.